Roll call, all members are present. All administrators are present. Attest to publication.
I definitely saw it posted.
Joni, thank you. Attest to publication, thanks. Approval of the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second that.
Motion made by Lori, seconded by Shelley to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. I will read the mission tonight. Bangor School District mission, vision, and value statements. Mission, Bangor Pride, a small school building big futures. Vision, an innovative small school creating excellence through personalized learning and relationships for all. Values, student-centered, small class sizes, continuous improvement, professionalism, opportunities for all, safety, foster community, sustainability. Moving on to public comments, John.
Okay, the first person on the list here is Denise Meyer. I will let her in. Just takes a second here, so. Denise, can you hear me? Okay, unmute, please.
You'd think I'd be good at this by now. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
go ahead.
Hello, Denise. Go ahead.
Hello, everybody. I just wanted to take some time to speak just to the specific issue of co-op students not being allowed to play if Bangor is virtual and their sport happens to be participating. And I just wanted to address that because no one ever reached out to me before this decision was made to get any opinion from me. And as far as I know, the other parents I have talked to as well that have students that play in a co-op sport were not reached out to either. But I just want to make sure you're all aware, and I don't know if you've had the opportunity to read my emails, but I just want to make you all aware what effect this will actually have on the students from several different perspectives. From one, their mental health. If they know that their team is playing and they're not being allowed to play for, at this time, what doesn't seem to be, a scientific reason necessarily, just because that's what Bangor decided. That's hard for them. I mean, it's hard for me to hear that that is possibly what might be happening to my daughter. I mean, I hope not. And to all these other students, it takes away their opportunity, even if Bangor does become in person again and they can go play. They haven't been there to practice. It's very competitive. It's not rec league where everybody gets an opportunity to play. If you're not there for the practices, learning the plays, and being involved in the systems, unless you're a superstar athlete, your opportunity is being taken away for the most part. And Alex, I'm her mom. I would say she's above average. She's definitely right in the mix. She definitely works hard at it. Unfortunately, we don't want to have ice at our house. So there's only so much she can do from home right now. And that's the same for the other co-op students. Wrestling is not really probably that easy to practice. You can certainly get stronger, but all the techniques, I don't know much about wrestling, but how do you practice those at home, without wrestling practice, and tips from your coaches? Same with gymnastics. People don't have that equipment just laying around their house generally. So really, it's kind of doing a double disservice to these students. I'm sure they're already upset. I know the basketball is not going to play if Bangor is virtual. I know that's been Bangor's stance, and I get it. I want them in school more than I want them in sports. I know Zoom schooling is hard on everybody, teachers and students and parents all included. This entire year has been extremely difficult for all of us. I'm sure we can all agree. And I just hope that you'll see that you're not making the community safer by not allowing these kids to play if their sport is going on just because Bangor is virtual. It's not, there's nothing that I've seen or heard from all the studies I've read about people being involved in activities that is going to make anything safer by doing this. In fact, you're just hurting certain kids' mental health worse. And they might have some small opportunity, maybe even just 1 week here or there that their sport might actually be playing. I mean, right now everything's shut down, right? And maybe this is a moot point. Maybe there will be no opportunities going forward. I certainly hope not. I hope that the community can be responsible enough to maybe get our numbers to a more manageable level. I don't know that that's going to happen, but I certainly pray for it. And we're trying to do our part too, to be responsible and stay home. But I've seen the protocols that Onalaska has for these girls, and I'm sure it's the same for all other sports. They're very, good protocols. They're not allowing, like if they're going to take buses to a game, they're taking 2 buses so that social distancing can occur. They're contract tracing. If you look at the USA Hockey website, they actually put like trackers on the kids while they play, and there is not one kid on the team who ever was within 15 minutes during gameplay of contact to another kid, just by the nature of hockey and how they go on and off the ice so often. Same lines on the other team versus our lines aren't out there at the same time. And the USA Hockey has a study on that for gameplay. So I know they're trying to do it safely. I don't know that, given the numbers, will ever be started up again. But if it is for any of these students started up and Bangor happens to still be virtual, I would certainly hope you give them the opportunity to have that, and be able to play and be able to fight for their spot on the team. I know you guys are doing a great job. I appreciate you listening to me. I know this is super hard for all of us. And I'm sure even harder for you. I'm on the hockey board for West Salem, so I only get a teeny slice of, I'm sure, what you all are dealing with, and I do appreciate it, and I appreciate you listening, and just thinking a little bit about these students and how hard this is for them, if they do get an opportunity and then it's just randomly taken away.
Thank you, Denise. Thanks for the support as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, John?
Yes. The next person is Nora Tucker. Hi, Nora.
Hi.
Hi, Nora.
Hi.
You can go
So-
ahead. You can go ahead whenever you're ready.
Okay. As we are aware, the La Crosse Public Schools have delayed winter sports until January 1st. We are also aware that throughout many instances during COVID, we have followed in the footsteps of La Crosse. We, however, are a fraction of the size of their school district. The argument when not playing fall sports and are simply because we were not at school. Onalaska, Luther, Aquinas, and Salem were either online or hybrid during this fall, but continued to play their fall sports season or what they could fit in. Appleton and Eau Claire High schools have a large enrollment and they have begun their winter season. Melrose Mindoro is just up the road from us and have continued athletics. There is no reason to delay winter sports when a study by UW-Madison was released stating that there is a very small risk to contract COVID while playing sports. If you think about it, by not having extracurriculars, you give us the freedom to do as we please after school. During school events, the schedule is simply go to school or attend Zoom, go to practice or game, come home, eat and do homework, shower, and then go to bed. You have more of a control on what we are doing if we can participate in these things. Limit the spectators, make us wear masks, that's fine. But please stop taking everything away from us. Haley Jones will continue with the rest of our thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Nora.
No, she did. Okay. Next person on the list is Haley Jones.
Hi, Haley. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
So adding on to what Nora Tucker discussed, us seniors, we're not really expecting like a graduation or anything. We've kind of lost hope in getting things, and there is a virus and you can't control it, but we also want to not have it control us. The players and coaches haven't really been asked like if we're comfortable playing or if they're comfortable coaching, but if we were, we would definitely say yes. We would love the opportunity to play. This is affecting mental health tremendously. One thing after another is canceled, and mentally people are giving up. The rate of suicide has increased over the pandemic, and I'm not saying us students are suicidal or anything, but it is leading to depression. Please consider this and let us play a winter sports season or start extracurriculars in general. There are ways to play games safely and perform band and choir concerts safely. We are aware that this was not on the agenda, so you can't make a decision tonight or anything. But we are asking to hold a special meeting to further the discussion on continuing extracurriculars, not only just like basketball, but also the co-op sports that Denise talked about with gymnastics, hockey, and wrestling. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Haley.
Okay, next one on the list is Tata Anna Wolf. Sorry if I pronounced that first name wrong, but.
Hi, Tatiana. How are you?
Hi, everybody. I'm doing pretty good. Hopefully
Go
my
ahead.
kids stay in the other room. So I would just take the minute to also talk about co-op sports, which Denise kind of talked about. I would echo everything that she has already stated, and I'll try not to repeat anything. Obviously, I have a freshman boy who is a wrestler. He spent the last, I don't know, since 4K participating in wrestling and co-opt with West Salem. It's very important to him. And it's what's important to him is important to me. So that's why I'm here today. In the last board meeting, the decision was made that if Bangor was virtual, then co-op sports wouldn't play. While I understand the idea that, you know, if Bangor is virtual, then like basketball and Bangor sports wouldn't play. So we should do the same for the co-op sports. My concern just comes from the fact that we're now relying on 2 schools to be in person for these students to be allowed to participate in their athletics. So that doubles the chance that they might not have that opportunity to participate versus if you're just worried about whether Bangor is in person or not. These co-op sports now have to rely on 2 schools. The other concern that I have about limiting co-op sports ability to play when Bangor is virtual is if Bangor is virtual and basketball is shut down, there's potential they might look, first of all, the whole basketball team is not practicing. And they might try to make up that game because they had to cancel the game. Whereas specifically, I'll speak to wrestling because that's just what I know. If the Bangor athletes and wrestlers aren't allowed to participate in practice and in the meets, West Salem will continue to have practice and will continue to have meets and will not be making up those meets. So the Bangor wrestlers will just completely miss out on that. I also think when we discuss teamwork and working as a team and how much a team relies on each other, by taking away a good portion of their team, you're messing with that entire dynamic of what a team is, which isn't necessarily affected by like Bangor sports that are only Bangor, but in these co-op sports where there are quite a few wrestlers that participate in co-op wrestling. And so they might just 1 week lose a good fourth of their team for that next meet, but then move forward with playing. Some of the other things that I am sure you guys have read my email or will read it, that, you know, I just think of when I think about the safety concerns with our students going to co-op sports when we're virtual is that we're allowing students in college classes and have allowed them for the last 3 months to attend their college classes, even though we were virtual on campus. I feel like if we felt that the colleges were handling it and following safe procedures enough that we're going to allow students to go there and attend school when we're virtual, then we should put that same trust into the coaches and our students that they're going to wear masks and they're going to stay in cohorts and they're going to do everything they can to remain safe. And I think that is fair if we're going to be allowing other students to participate and go to places that we're concerned is going to put our student body at risk. Another thing that I think about when I think about co-op sports not being allowed to play if Bangor is virtual is I actually think it's maybe more safe if we're virtual and our students are going and practicing, they're just coming home and they're not exposing a student body anyway because we're virtual. So I know that's one of the big concerns and I understand that. And I honestly thank you guys for making the tough decisions to keep our kids and our community safe. But when we're virtual and our students are going and practicing and going to games, they're coming home and not going to school. They're doing school from home. So they're not putting anyone else at risk. And then just the last point, when we're talking about safety and COVID, and I don't want to limit anyone's activities, so I hope no one feels that that's what I'm trying to do. But if we're going to allow other communities to come into our schools and practice in our schools when they're virtual because of high COVID numbers, I think that's more of a safety concern. Like if we have a basketball game and we're playing another school that is virtual, but they come and they bring their spectators because we're going to allow 2 guests per each player they have and their players into our gym with our students and our spectators, I feel like that's putting our community and our students more at a risk than allowing our co-op athletes to go and participate in athletics at another school that is not virtual. Because my understanding is if Wassalem is virtual, they won't have practice, but if they're in school, they will. So we would only be participating if they were in school. So I would think the other thing was we had reached out as some wrestling parents to Ryan Olson, the AD at Wassalem, and he stated that he would follow whatever Bangor's decision was. So he said that even if we were virtual, he would still let our athletes come and practice with them. But if obviously if our board said that we weren't allowed to practice, then we wouldn't be allowed to practice. And I think that's saying a lot because you would think that them as a school that would be in person would be more worried about us as a school that was virtual coming there and practicing with their kids. But he was open to allowing our kids to come there. I really appreciate your time. And I hope that we can look at a special meeting to address all winter sports decisions and or at least have some more discussion about it. Not that you necessarily will change the decisions you made, but just to discuss some of the points that were brought up tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have one last person on the list here. Get him going here. I believe it is Merlin Jones. She go.
Hi, Merlin.
Hi, guys. Everybody hear me?
Yes,
All right,
go
perfect.
ahead.
I guess I've got a few things I guess I'd like to ask. I mean, I'd first of all asked to kind of be on the agenda tonight to kind of discuss some of the same topics and issues, I guess, that I see and I hear about that are going on out there. Obviously with concerns about our kids, our students, not just athletes, but any of our kids that are in extracurricular events, as well as even the non-co-curricular kids. I guess I'm not on it, so I'm just going to speak this way, I guess, for tonight and see where we can go from there. My concern is obviously for all the kids, not just the sports athletes out there, even though I am a coach of one group. I believe that we can be successful, we can get out there and we can get these kids back out there and be active in a safe manner. And I think we need to use these kids and the resources that they supply to us, which is their leadership skills. I guess when I look around as to what I see being in the community as I have, it concerns me, I guess, when I see us as adults, that we're out there, we're leading our lives, and these kids see that, and they're seeing that, whether it's their parents or other people, other adults, some of us, basically all of us that are here tonight, even as far as that goes, are still living our life to the fullest. Yeah, we've had to pay the consequences for some things, wearing a mask, maybe not being able to go with groups and into some settings that way, but, we've been able to go to weddings. We've been able to, have our jobs. Some of them are from home. Some of them are still from our workplace and our work environment. We can go to restaurants. We can, get together with our friends. We can still do things like that, which are all good for us. Some of these kids, I believe, are out there, and I've heard of cases close to home where depression, mental issues are going on out there. I mean, I don't know if you guys are all aware of the situation in Hillsborough where a young lady has taken her life down there as a sophomore in high school. I also know of a young lady that has been very dependent upon, she's coming from a broken home. She's very dependent upon the people that were close to her. And in that school, they feel they've lost that girl right now, that young lady, and she's a senior in high school, and she's now turned towards drugs and alcohol. And I don't believe that our students in Bangor, whether it's the athletes, co-curricular students out there, and hopefully not, the other students out there, just regular students, we've lost any of them that way. But it's the side effects of what could be lingering for years to come. The depression, obviously, which we may not see for years. Some of the concerns, I guess, that I've got is obviously is where's our education going with them? Not are we educating them, but how serious are our kids taking it? Some kids take their education, they use the events that they're in as motivation to be more successful in some of those classes, to try harder. And right now there's nothing for these kids to lose because we don't have a plan in place as to get back out there and when and how we can really get out there. A county number is a county number, but it's not really a plan that we're looking to improve and how can we do this in a better way to make these kids safe. Other schools around are doing it. My question is, have we investigated? Have we spent the time looking at a school district like Toma, who has been live with everything all the way through? Melrose Mindoro's been in school other than a couple days here, and they're a very close school to us and very close in size to us. I don't think we want to shut anything down. As in our businesses around the community, that's not good for us, for our community support, or Bangor won't even be here anymore. And I'm proud of the people that have still been out and doing whatever they can to support the local community here as far as that goes, and including myself and many others. But I do think that if we were to go back to some other activities, and I think all activities could go out with a game plan. I have my own game plan as how I would execute basketball, how I would do my best to keep these kids as safe as possible. As others have stated about the studies that are out there, with the low transmission of the virus to athletes through sports. There's been numerous studies out there. I have yet to hear of a death to an athlete that has not been able to come back. Obviously it is a serious thing, yes, but we have to look at the group of people that it affects, and also the facts that the people and the kids want to get back out, and what can we do to make this possible. Like I said, with the education out there, I believe that if we keep these kids busy, the safest place for them is the school where the regulations are out there. Moms and dads are still working jobs, and not everybody is able to work from home and be able to regulate and monitor their kids. And so there are hours out there where these kids are able to freely run and go do what they want, and we can't control that. Lastly, I guess the one thing I would wonder is, some of the numbers that we've been tracing out there, how many of those are our students, and how many of them are the adults, our staff and our support staff and our faculty and whatever else. I mean, I know, obviously, have we broke things down? I mean, I've heard Hillsborough has broken their numbers down They're exceeding what their county number is that they've been given. But at the same point in time, they've looked at the numbers and they've said, as a school, the people that have enhanced and been part of that number, they're people, just as your mother and father, Julie, or yourself and your husband, who do not have, kids that are not directly affected to the school with having bodies that are coming into the school themselves. You take some of them away, and that's how Hillsborough is still in school today. Like I said, I talked to Nisita. Nisita's quarantine rate's been over 100, and they are finally now shutting down. Ours are, I believe that today I saw the number out at 21. So I guess, like I said, I really feel like there is a way. And I guess, other than just looking at a number out there, have we looked at what other schools can do? But it is something I'd like to further discuss. And I think there's a lot of numbers out there. I've talked to a lot of people that obviously have some information that they'd like to feed to this.
Thank you.
Thank
Can I ask Merlin just one question? Merlin, are you mainly talking school, or are you also talking sports? Like, are you talking both when you talk about wanting to further discuss numbers, or are you talking mainly one first and then into the other? What kind of?
I guess, if you can hear me, Tina, I guess when you talk about the numbers, I'm looking at the positive cases out there, and I'm looking at the quarantine cases. And I guess when I see quarantine cases, and I see positive cases, are our positive cases part of our quarantine numbers? Because obviously as positive, you have to be quarantined. So when I look at 21 and I see, 21 quarantines, and I see 5 positive, are we really only at 16, or are we at 26?
Thank you. I just think they're really two separate issues when we look at numbers, depending on if we're talking school and our requirements there, if we're talking starting up sports. I think they're very different on what you're asking. That's all. I just need clarification for that.
Yep. No, I agree, Tina. And like I said, other Hillsborough has done the number based on what their district is. But when they looked at the number of people in their district that totally affected the school, that had students or were people that worked within the school, that's the number that they came off of. Their number was at 85. Their county said if they were over 50, they should shut down. They found that their number was not at 50, directly impacting the school itself, but 85 people in the district. Okay.
Thank you, Marilyn.
That's it, Julie.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on in the agenda, approval of minutes, open session Wednesday, October 21st.
Julie, what I'll do, because you don't have a paper packet in front of you, I'll just reference the page numbers so you
Okay.
can kind of follow through on the packet that I sent you. So the minutes are on pages 6, 7, and 8 for the board members.
I'll move to approve the minutes of the regular meeting held on Wednesday, October 21st.
I'll second that motion.
Motion made by Joni, seconded by Paul to approve minutes from open session Wednesday, October 21st. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Vouchers.
Okay, and that starts on page 10, and there's a link to them. And I know that we received some questions from a couple board members, and I talked to Angie and she responded. So I don't know if those any other board members have questions, but there were, I believe Lori and Joni, you had some questions, and Angie responded to them, correct?
Yes, she did, and that answered my question. So thank you.
I got my answer as well.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the vouchers.
Second.
Motion by Shelley, seconded by Tina to approve the vouchers. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you. Activity account.
And Julie, that's on pages 10 and 11.
I'll make a motion to approve the
I'll second.
Motion made by Tina, seconded by Lori to approve the activity account. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Financial report.
Okay, and you will find that on page 12, and I'll just go through it quickly. Under receipts, state of Wisconsin, number one, sparsity aid. And this is an adjustment that for that aid, we actually receive about $240,000 a year. And it's based on your membership in rural areas. And if it's less than a certain 10 per square mile, you get aided back on that. So we have approximately 600 students, and each student is aided at 400. So it's about 240,000. So this was just an adjustment that they made. So for 12,333. Number two, Department of Justice Safety Grant. This is the last part of the grant. If you remember, these were actually, I think 3 years ago, there was a part one to the grant, and then there was a part two to the grant. And so this is the last payment towards it. And this went to the security vestibule. Then if you go down to vendor refund overpayment under miscellaneous, number two. This was what happened is when we switched workman's comp companies in September, we had made the initial payment. And so when we switched companies, there was a refund back to us for that payment. The Organic Valley Food Pantry donation, and that's specifically what it was. Organic Valley donated to the food pantry, $419.82. So we want to thank them for that. And then the number 6, teacher liquidated damages for $1,000. That was based on a resignation after the school year starts, and per the handbook, that is the damages that are payable. So total revenue of $678,765.01. Total expenditures, $642,476.09. So our balance on hand on 11/12 was $548,362.74. So any questions on that?
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Second.
Motion by Lori, seconded by Tina to approve the financial report. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Old business, I do not believe we have any. Committee reports? Anything, Mr. Lane?
None right now, Julie.
Okay, moving on to board president's agenda. Reminder to incumbent board members of declaration of candidacy requirements.
Okay.
A reminder for Lori, Village of Bangor, Tina, Village of Rockland, and Paul at Large are the candidates that are up for re-election in 2021, April. December 28th is the deadline to file non-candidacy papers, and January 5th is the deadline for candidates to file paperwork for candidacy. And also in our packet is a schedule at the glance, or a schedule that talks about all, or shows all of the important dates for election and so on and so forth. Any questions?
Julie, just to add that if we were to have to run a spring primary, that's on February 16th. And again, the rule of thumb for a seat, if it has 2+1, which means if there's one seat, so if you have 3 candidates for that seat, then there has to be a primary. So just a clarification on that. And then the spring election is slated for April 6th. So just a couple other pieces.
Thank you. All right, any questions? All right, next, school board convention, virtual format. I know we get emails almost every week. January 20th to the 22nd. I see Donald Driver as a speaker. It will be virtual. If there's any interest, I guess let Dave know.
Yes, yes.
Next, first reading of board policy 167.7, board member electronic communications.
And you'll find that on pages 16 and 17. In going through our board policy, we have a policy on email. And when board members email, there's obviously certain things that they have to take into account in terms of public records, open records. But we did not have anything on electronic communications. And so we reached out to Bob Butler, and this is the policy that he is recommending. So again, the purpose of it is to remind board members that electronic communications that can be subject to retention and possible public disclosure. So we want to be careful of how that is used. Also, if you go down that document, there is a paragraph that says, as to any form of electronic communication that pertains to his or her office or to district business, a board member should ask himself or herself the following questions. And again, the whole thing about open records. And then if you go to page 17, I want to highlight number 4. It says communications during school board meetings, committee meetings, and or other board directed task force unless such use is necessary and integral to the function of the meeting or is needed in order to monitor childcare or some other personal emergency. So just the understanding that during a board meeting that the use of it should be very, very limited according to those guidelines. So questions on the policy. Again, this is a first reading. So if you approve the first reading tonight, we would bring it back to the December meeting for a second reading.
Motion to approve the first reading of board policy 0167.7.
Second that.
Motion made by Shelley, seconded by Paul, to approve the first reading of board policy 167.7. Board member electronic communications, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, operating referendum for 2022 and through 2025.
And you will find that on page 18. So we have an anomaly in that we have always run our operating referendums, and we've done 3-year operating referendum in November of the general election. Well, next year there is no general election, and that is the last year of our 1922 referendum. So we have to look at some options in terms of that. And the other big thing that from the notes, as you can see, as you read them through, about 3-4 years ago, the state legislature prohibited holding special elections for referendums. Previous to that, if a district did want to run a referendum, and most districts would do them during the general elections or primaries, but there were cases where districts would run it, have their own special election and run their referendums at that time, but that is now taken away. So what I've listed for you is options. So option 1 would be to run a vote in the general election. And again, this would for referendum for the years 22 through 25. So you would run the vote in the general election on April 6th of 2021. So this April coming up. We would have to approve the vote to go to referendum by January 26th at the latest, because that would meets the 70-day requirement for running referendums. I did talk at length with Brian Brewer about this, and he believes that we have more than enough time over the next couple of months to do this, because as you remember, Debbie Shufeltowski Burnett, who works for Baird, has come and presented at our board meetings about the Baird forecast model. And so we would have her do that. So what we would have to do is, if you're saying, yeah, let's look at go ahead and doing this, then she would get the model to Angie, and then Angie would put all the data in, and then they would put the model together and then present it at a board meeting either in December or January. We can hold special meetings if necessary in January to meet that January 26th timeline. And the last point, if the referendum were to fail in April 2021, it would allow you to run it again either on the February 2022 spring primary or the April 22 general election. And so and I put the bullet points for each of those underneath. The reason that I would recommend if you decide to run the referendum on April 2021 and it would fail, I would recommend to you and to the new superintendent to run it in February, because if it were to fail again, then there would have to be budget cuts, obviously, in staffing, especially staffing. That's the realization. So it would give you time to do that. Where option 3, if you waited till April of 2022, that's cutting it very close, because in April and May is when you are issuing contracts and letters of intent to staff. So obviously we want to think positively and hope it passes the first time, but those are things that the board would need to take into consideration in terms of timelines. So I guess if there entertain questions on this, I would say that tonight you're not voting to go ahead, excuse me, with the referendum. You're simply giving us direction that's saying, okay, go ahead and talk to Baird about getting this forecast model, because again, the final vote to say, yes, we're going to hold it in April, and for how much would not have to be done until January 26th.
Dave, could Baird have a model ready by, I don't know, second week in January or?
I think that's.
I mean, I know in the past we've had special meetings for this.
Right. Yeah, I think it's very doable, Julie, because once Angie gets that data, the model it's a very good model, and obviously Debbie is very expert at it. So I don't think that would be a problem. So if you give me direction tonight, I will be talking with Brian and Debbie right away tomorrow, and then I can get back to you with, but Brian didn't think that there was a problem at all.
Yeah, you've got a bullet point on here. I'm sorry, I didn't read. Brian stated that he could run the stuff before. Okay.
Yeah, but if you're saying, could it be done by the second week in January? I would have to ask him and Debbie if that's possible. I think it is, but I would want to make sure.
Okay.
April 21 seems so early, but we're kind of pigeonholed into that, aren't we?
Yeah, Joni, because again, not having a general election, because again, what you could have done if you would have had a general election in November of 2021 was, if it failed, you could turn around and run it again you would have had time to either run it in the February primary in 2022 or the general election. The other thing is, again, with the primary in February 2022, if it fails, there's not enough time, there's not enough separation date-wise to run it again in April. So
we
Right.
could, so in February 22nd or year 2022, if it failed, we could not run it in April because of the 70 days, correct?
yes,
Then-
correct.
Yeah, well, then it's pretty obvious that we should do it in April, right? Or am I looking at that wrong?
I don't think it's obvious at all that we run it in April of 21. With the way we are sitting right now, we're looking at 5 months away of running this. And with everything hitting a high right now, I do not think that is a good time to go asking for an operating referendum. I don't like that timeline at all. I would prefer to wait until February of 22 to run it and take my chances on that versus running it here in April.
I'm very nervous about April.
Yeah, I don't like it at all.
But if option 2, if that fails in February of 22, you still have enough time to get in April of 22, or you
No.
don't?
No,
You
you
don't.
don't.
And so if you run it April 21, this April, will the board seats be at that election also, or will those board seats be?
Yes.
Could you have
It'll be the
both
same election.
actually at the same election, right? So
Yes.
Yeah, we're kind of between a rock and a.
Again, the negative of waiting till February or April of 2022 is it's a one shot then, because you wouldn't be able to run, you try again until
I am-
November of 2022.
I understand that completely, not being able to run it again until November. But even if it fails in April of 21, we are still going to have to make cuts, because if you think you can come back 1 year later and run the same referendum without making any cuts, and I'm not talking about cutting out pop, I'm talking about major cuts. You're not going to have a passing referendum if one failed without major cuts. Whether you run it in April of 21 or February of 22, if either one of them fails, you're going to have to make major cuts either way. The public is not going to accept, oh, we're just going to run it again and, cut a little fluff here and a little fluff there, and they're going to be satisfied with that.
But Shelley, if you run it in 2020, April, remember you still have, if it fails, remember that's going into fiscal year 21-22. That's the last year of the current referendum.
I understand that. I understand that completely. I totally get the picture of it runs out and we cannot go to referendum again until November of 22. But to run it in 5 months with everything going on that's going on, I guess I'm only one person, so I mean.
Well, I guess I'd like to understand what you mean by that, Shelley. I mean, yeah, there's a lot going on. Everybody's dealing with what's going on, but that doesn't change the financial situation of the school district. So I'm trying to understand your bigger point.
Okay, the bigger point is we do not have anybody in-house. I get a lot of stuff from the community on when are there going to be cuts made? Why is your budget? What kind of money are we saving? Do we even need a building? Can we go virtual all the time and stay there? So if we are still virtual in the spring and we're going to go and ask the public for money to support our school building, which is not being utilized at all, that is a hard sell.
Yeah, that I appreciate your response. I personally don't see it that way. To say that the school is somehow sitting empty and therefore we should stop investing in it is short-sighted in my opinion. But That's just an opinion.
Yeah, I'm not saying I agree with that opinion, but I'm saying that opinion is definitely out there.
Mhm. Yeah, and you're right, Shelley, and I'm glad you brought it up, Shelley.
I mean, I'm sure you hear it about the university all the time, all the brick and mortar down there and what's it there for. I mean, it's going on pretty much all over.
So what do we want to, what recommendations do we want to make today?
I think there's a lot to be said for being able to put it out there and let people have the voice. And if we have seats elect at the same time we would have this referendum, you would have multiple people coming at the same time for school things. And then you can come back if it is a no. If we have the last two options, 2 and 3, and we don't have a chance to come back, I don't know how you open up that following year without any money. I mean, so then what do you do?
Yeah, I also would like to comment, that to your point, Shelley, that if it fails, we can't come back with the same referendum. Everyone understands that, but that also implies that, I think you used the word fluff, that I think we've learned through experience that we don't put a question out there with fluff built into it. Other schools have done that. They put something that they know is going to get voted down that they know they can do without, whether it's a building remodel or something like that. But I don't know that that's a foregone conclusion, that if it's voted down, yes, we have to take a serious look. We have to take the input from the citizenry and so on. But to assume that we're just going to cut for the sake of cutting, that says that we haven't done a good job selling it on the front end. So,
Right.
and again, if the biggest concern is because of the current situation that we're in, given the virus and the remote learning and so on, who's to say that may or may not be the issue a year later? Does that somehow then because the people are back in school, then somehow the building is more valuable again, and now we should be investing in it? I guess those are all things we need to consider. Again, I get your point. It's going to be tough for anybody, a pill for anyone to swallow, but our obligations don't go away because of the virus.
I agree. I agree 100%. I'm just saying, like, yeah, it is going to be a tough sell. It is going to be a lot of basically internet Zoom type meetings and information being put out there online, because we will not be able to have the face-to-face pretty much for sure. Basically not large gatherings anyway in January and February. It's probably highly unlikely unless this thing turns around quite quickly. But like I said, I'm one person, so I mean, whatever the board agrees to is going to be the way it's going to go.
I don't like either option, but I think we have to give ourselves a second chance. So that's, I don't like the early vote, but because of the way it's set up, I just think we have to give ourselves a second chance. It's the only reason I'm April.
I would share with you, and one of the reasons that I caught that, no general election is Baird shares, and I don't know if the board members get these, but when there is a election and there's referendums, they share the results of them. And, we all know that how tough this has been the last 6 months with COVID and everything, but in Wisconsin, there were 41 districts that went to referendum on November 3rd, and for 41 school districts with a total of 51 questions. So some of them must have, a couple questions on their referendum. The good news, and hopefully this would, be the case when we would go, but 84% of referendums in Wisconsin passed, in spite of the difficulties that we all know that the nation and our state our communities are facing. So I just wanted to share that. That's from Baird.
And all of the
I
reference
have to,
CISA 4 passed in November.
I have to agree with Joni. I have to agree with Joni's statement. I think delaying it is just, it's taking undue risk. I mean, if it fails, the first one fails, then to Shelley's point, then we got to take a close look at why it failed and so on. But at least we have that second opportunity before we go into draconian cuts because of not, allowing ourselves time. So I agree that we need to at least give ourselves that second opportunity should it fail.
So what I'm hearing is that the board, majority of the board feels we should have Dave talk to Baird, see if Debbie can come in, or Brian, or whoever it'll be in January. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes.
And plan for the April 2021 election?
And again, Julie, just to remind everybody that, so let's say that Debbie comes and the numbers don't look good or whatever it may be. January 26th is the date that last date that you could say yes or no. So by having Baird come and present, that doesn't hold us to anything. It's just information. So
I think that's important. There's nothing binding by a decision that we make tonight. It's
Right.
Right.
directional.
Right, we're not voting.
Right.
We're just listening, learning. Okay, good point. Any questions, Dave?
you're directing me to talk
Any,
to Brian.
any
and-
questions for us about,
No, I will contact them and
Okay.
I will let you know what I find out.
all right, thank you. Thanks, everyone. Next, board docs. I'm gonna give that to Dave.
Okay, and in your packets, it's page 19 through 23, I believe, yes. So board docs, the reason that we're looking into this was we want to, if anything has taught us over the last number of months with the COVID is the need for transparency. And so what Board Docs does, it's actually, Board Docs is the parent company of, I shouldn't say of Neola. So our Neola platform is on Board Docs. So if we were to look at Board Docs as a board meeting tool, it would be housed right along the Neola policy. So if you've been on our board policy site, there would be just additional buttons that then when we have a board meeting, it would have all the documents and they would be online for both the board and the public. Now the documents would be broken down by approval agenda, discussion agenda, executive. Executive is kind of like our closed session. So most of the documents would be there on that platform for the board and the community to see. And again, it's to increase transparency. So in talking to the Board Docs people, I had a conversation with them today that we would be able to, if we were to look at going to this, we could be trained whenever if you would approve it within the next month, and they can do the training as a group or they can do it individually, and it's an hour and a half training. In talking to Bob Butler, because if you go to the WASB site, Board Docs is one of the services that they're tied to with that. I could do more research if you would like me to find out the local districts that use it, the pros and cons of it. nationwide, board docs there's 13,000 districts in the nation, 4,000 use board docs. And if you look at the platform there, they have 3 different levels. And so if you go to page 19, I would recommend, if we were to look at going to this, is Board Docs LT. And because again, we already have the policy management of Neola on Board Docs. So what it would do is, if you go to page 19, is it would allow us to put it on online and electronically publish and revise agenda items. And again, it would be live. So if there's an update to it, you would see it, the community would see it right away rather than republish the document. So as I said, there would be training on it. So if you were to look at this, again, it would be meeting management system. The price of it would be, because we're a WASB member, it's $3,000 annually. And in talking to the Board Docs people, if we did sign up, and I'm sure this is a sales technique, they said that they would waive the $1,000 setup fee. So
How much was the setup fee? I'm sorry.
$1,000, Julie.
Okay.
But they
Okay.
said if within a certain time period, if we signed up with them, that could be waived. So,
Got it.
Again, there you can see that there's other levels: Board Docs Plus and Board Docs Pro. And again, they have a lot of great features. But again, because we have the policy with Neola already set up, my recommendation is the LT. And they recommend it, very honestly, for smaller districts. So questions on it. Again, I can certainly gather more localized information regarding Board Docs in terms of who uses it locally, pros and cons that they see, how long they've been with it, if you would like that type of information, or just to go from there.
The contract is just for a year.
It's I believe I have to relook at it. Tina, I'm sorry. The annual fee is $3,000. I need to look at that again. I'm sorry, because I just kind of was able to get a hold of them today. So
There's an annual fee that implies that it's a year-to-year contract.
yeah, yep. Kind of very honestly, like our Neola is a year-to-year cost. So
Sometimes it's so much per year though, but you have to sign on for 3 years or 4.
Right, right,
Right, okay.
right, Joni. To get that price, yeah.
So
would you?
in general, I think, I'm sorry, go ahead, Dave.
No, I was just going to say, again, I am more than willing to gather more localized information if you would like.
Well, I'm just curious if the rest of the board has an opinion on this. I personally think this is a good, a positive move in direct response to repeated criticism. This is a way to formalize the communication with the general public, rather than have a secretary or someone gather a bunch of PDF files and put them out there. It takes some of the burden off us as board members as to what can and cannot be shared. So we don't have to worry about, are we saying too much or sharing something we shouldn't share, et cetera, et cetera. I know there is some disagreement in past meetings over what should be public and what shouldn't be. I think this is a way of formalizing that process. It's responding to criticism we've had. And again, it's a proven system that many, many boards use. We didn't just dream this up. This came from a recommendation, quite frankly, of Bob Butler. So I personally think it's a worthwhile investment, and it's addressing a known problem. Anyone else have questions, comments?
I haven't seen the product itself, but I mean, I was kind of glad to see this as well, because I think I think people have woke up. I think we're going to have more participation. I think we're encouraging more participation at the school board level, and for them to be able to see it ahead of time and not just see little bits and pieces is very much a plus.
I would say it keeps the communication open, so I would be in favor of it as well.
Yeah, we have nothing to hide. We're happy to share the documents, the information. And this just makes it, like Paul said, formalizing the process. So Dave, what's our next step?
Again,
Can I
if
do some more investigating?
I can certainly do that. If people feel
Or
more
what
comfortable.
more do we need? Board, what more do we need?
Well, what are we going to investigate?
I
Yeah,
just want a contract. If it's a 1-year contract or a 3-year contract, if we can get out after a year, I'm fine with it. If we like it and we can keep going, then great.
so you want to know some of the logistics? That makes sense. No, I don't think we need any more investigating. I mean, but it's right here, so.
But I like what Tina's question is. If we could just verify that we're not signing on for 5 years or whatever.
Or 10.
So then
I mean,
more specific
even if it's 3
information,
years.
bring it back. Sorry, Tina.
I'm fine with it either way. I mean, we took the risk with the advertising a few years ago, and this isn't really that much of a dollar amount that we're investing here, but it's also going to hold the history, right? So you can have all your back information, right? Like you can look historically back, correct?
Yes.
I don't see a downfall.
And I'm looking through, because I just received it recently to Tina's question. I'm reading that it is a annual subscription fee. And so it is a 1-year agreement based on what I'm reading. So I will double check that tomorrow I am Skyping with the salesperson. And if I'm not correct in the way I'm reading the contract, I will definitely get back to you. But the way I'm reading it is it's a year-by-year agreement.
Shelley or Jack, you have any downfalls on it or?
Nope, I
Good.
just have a couple questions. So my question is the electronically publish and revise support documents. I'm going to assume that means the things I was talking about last month and the things that I share for the integral function of the meeting. So the things that are part of our agenda, the things that come before us, the things that people want to see before the meeting that I was bringing up last month. So those things will be shared. People will have access to them. That's what this is doing, right?
Right.
Okay, just clarifying.
If nobody has any other questions, or Shelley, you're good, I would make the motion to approve the board docs to be.
I'll second it.
That.
Who was second?
Shelley.
Motion made by Tina, seconded by Shelley to approve using board docs. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, next item, correspondence on page 24. Mr. Nathan Brooks and I believe Susan is his wife made a generous donation. And take a look at that on page 24.
And Julie,
This
I
is Dave's
sent him.
sentiment. It's the thank you note that Dave sent.
Yeah. I always do a handwritten one because I think it's always a little more personal. So, but for the board purposes, I just typed it up real quick since it was so short. But obviously, just a wonderful thing. Class of '95, Nathan Brooks was so very much appreciated.
Okay. All right, CISA 4 report, that's me. As I mentioned before, there were, 6 referendums that all passed on November 3rd from CISA 4. The big thing I wanted to share is that CISA 4, and Dave, please chime in because I know the superintendents have heard about this too. They're looking at becoming a licensing agency.
Yes.
And this, they're looking at different pathways for this, a district-sponsored program or a post-baccalaureate program. CISA is going to apply for each licensure. This would be working with schools. Say you have a person that already has a bachelor's degree in psychology, and they would have a desire to become a social studies teacher. That is something that they could do through this licensing agency. This is just beginning discussion. They have not been approved by the DPI yet. That is the next step. But it's an opportunity to grow more educators within the CISA 4 region, timely, customized, local. So pretty exciting on CISA 4's part, very innovative. And I will share more as I know more. They just gave a quick little overview at our last CISA 4 meeting. And the two people that are working on that from CISA are Jen Rasmussen and Kay Hendrickson. And I think that's all that I had. Of course, yeah, I think that's it. I will share more about that. Any handouts that I have, I'll share too at our next meeting or a couple meetings or whenever. Any questions? All right, on to the administrator's report. Mr. Chaplin.
Thanks, Julie. Pretty short for me this month. First thing I have on there, and my report is on page 26, I believe. The IDEA anniversary. In 1975, President Ford signed the Education for All Handicapped Children Act, and now it's been revised, known as Individuals with Disability Education Act. Prior to that, students with disabilities attended, either they weren't allowed in schools or they had to attend a special school, and that law made it so that all public schools were having to educate those students with disabilities. So it's been 45 years since then. The last reauthorization of that law was in 2004. So we're actually,
Josh, we lost you. Josh?
Can you still hear me?
Now we
Now
can.
we can.
Okay. So like I said, that law, we're operating on the last reauthorization in 2004. So the law is pretty old and needs reauthorizing, but it's pretty far down the legislative agenda list and probably won't get picked up until someone in Congress has a student with a disability and they really push it. So I don't expect it to be authorized anytime soon. So like I said, we're operating under pretty old law and guidance on that. So next thing is I always joke about is School Psychologist Awareness Week. Most everybody else gets an Appreciation Week, or a month, but school psychologists, we just get awareness. That's that. And then the last thing I have on there is the 2021 state testing. I did bold in there that the state did move back the access for ELL testing window to February. It was slated to start in December. I did send an email to Steve Doyle, Brad Paff, and the state superintendent about my displeasure with having to continue to do state testing this year because of and the lost in face-to-face instruction. I only heard back from Steve Doyle's office that they would look into it. I did see that Governor Evers' proposals did have applying for waivers or suspending state testing for this year as well. So Not that state testing isn't important, but I think given what we're in, it's probably not the best thing to take many hours and days out of instruction in the spring to have to do that, as there is no contingency for at-home testing. All testing would have to be done in person at the school. We'll see where it goes in the coming weeks and months. And that's all I have.
Any questions for Mr. Chaplin?
No, but Mr. Chaplin, we do appreciate you more than just once a week.
Well, you just have to be aware of me.
We are aware of you too. Thank you, Mr. Chaplin. Mr. Johnson.
Thanks, Julie. I hope you can hear me okay. Just an update on virtual learning. Of course, the elementary school is face-to-face for 4 weeks, and I do believe that 4 weeks was such a quality experience. I think our teachers really felt that they were able to step on the accelerator on the learning opportunities during that time. Of course, since then, things have gotten a little bit worse, and we've had to go back to virtual. Having that first month of school to fall back onto the routines, it didn't take us any time at all to get back into our routines of virtual learning. The schedule stayed pretty much the same. And one of the good things, we were able to get through our F&P testing while we were in person. Unfortunately, we had the following week set up to do our MAPS testing. That did not happen on time because of the closure, but we are utilizing the F&P data and continuing to work with kids. We are seeing some lower scores than what we would like to see based on, just since March. But the teachers have continually tried to continue to put together good plans to address those issues. We're talking on a regular basis, the PLC processes, and in fact, just had a really great conversation today just with teachers brainstorming ways that we can utilize the schedule that we have in place without extending Zoom video screen time for the little ones to a crazy amount or anything like that, and still get bang for our buck. We're leaning on our experts, Diane and Melissa, to add input into what we're doing and our strategies to go from there. So it's been a really good effort. Everybody wants to do great. And it's moving along. I wish we were back in person, but since we're not, the product we're putting out there is being successful. At least it appears on my end. I don't hear any negatives from parents or children for that matter, and attendance is very good. Parent-teacher conference update. We did all virtual. We worked with the teachers, put together sign-up opportunities for parents digitally. Seemed like at the PTO meeting on Monday, we talked about that process and how it went, and the feedback was very positive. We had, I would say we had great turnout. The vast majority of grade levels were in the 90%. So really at our level, if you have missed one parent out of a group, you're still at 90%, but that was pretty much the case. Overall, the percentage rate was 88%. We did have one grade level where I think it was 4 conferences had to be were remade or rescheduled. Basically, it didn't happen on that night, but they're happening or already have happened actually. So the one thing that came out of the virtual conferences, it was kind of an interesting thing, was the parents appeared to be more talkative. So I don't know if that's just an anomaly or if that's just the teacher's perspective or whatever. From a parent perspective at the elementary level, and I thought about this earlier, but because the conversation came up, it was very convenient for some parents. They really appreciated the opportunity. But at the elementary level, there's so much sharing of student work, and just walking through our building is an experience to see what the kids are doing. So that part of it was missed by the parents and their experience. So although I think it was a success, I don't think at the elementary level it's something that we'll lean on heavily. I think, but I guess never say never, but I think you might see parents requesting this of the teachers in the future, saying, can we do something virtually? And I think that now, we have this experience. It's not an intimidating thing by any stretch. And, how we sign parents up for conferences probably will stay virtual or stay digital. I mean, so I think a lot of good came out of it. I think we connected with parents. We shared a lot of things that we're working on and need to continue to work on. So, and then the last piece of that I have is we have an intervention that we're trying to get done. It's a 6-week intervention, and we're working with students face-to-face on that. And it's a window of 6 weeks. Our staff that would normally be doing that is on Zoom at these times, and I'm asking the board to approve extending Steph Steiner's contract by 45 minutes for about 6 weeks. So she can complete that intervention with a couple of our students. And after 6 weeks, then she would just go back to her normal schedule. So the time she can work with those 2 children is from 8:30 to 9 in the morning. Her normal schedule was at 9:15 start time. Sorry. So that is on page 27. I had a write up on just a request there.
I would move to approve the additional 45 minutes for Steph Steiner to accomplish the intervention as requested.
I just have a question. When we're in a virtual world, can she come in early and leave early?
She's working, our pairs are working with grade levels to assist them in anything from working with kids, but also getting packets and things together at the end of the day. And she takes care of a large part of our food pantry and organizing. We've been getting some grant money or some gift money for that. So the kids leave at 11:20. So then that's that window of time for that intervention to occur, but they're working either with title or working with their Zooms and their teachers already. So that window of time was at additional 8, or it was at 8:30. It was the only time in the kids' schedule that we could get them. So whether she can leave early, her normal schedule is she's full to the end of the day the way it is.
I would second the
Actually,
motion.
she works 4 days a week too, so it's Monday through Friday, or Monday through Thursday, not Monday through Friday.
Okay, so Joni made a motion.
I second that, Julie.
Motion made by Joni, seconded by Paul, to extend paraprofessional Steph Steiner's hours by 40 minutes each day for the next 6 weeks. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, Mr. Mullenberg.
Mike, I'd like to give an update on our virtual learning. I do appreciate all the continued work by our staff and the support of the parents and students. I know it's not the most conducive environment, but everybody's working hard. We continue to have discussions as a staff about pacing and workload. That's been ongoing. Every unit that we're doing is new in this virtual setting. So we talked about a lot of that last Friday again, kind of on a weekly basis, focusing on our ELOs, PLC time, and discussing best practices that way. So like I said, I'd like to thank the staff, parents, and students for their help with that. Parent-teacher conferences, like Mike said, some of the comments that our staff was given were some parents like the convenience of not having to take off of work, but to be able to do that. Others did say they missed face-to-face. I mean, you have both parties there. We did have 524 individual Zoom conferences. That number is down from last year in the fall, but it was still quite extensive to be doing on Zoom. Staff said that they felt like like Mike said, that parents were a little more talkative over Zoom and gave more input and feedback, which they thought was very important. And they appreciate everybody being on there. We had a couple technical things that we took care of, but other than that, I thought the experience went about as well as it could. Lastly, I put in the packet, it's kind of a long write-up on but I thought it was very important, the State Music Association State Honors Project, where we had Jaden Larson for the second time that was selected. And it's an extremely tough group to get chosen for. Over 1,000 students audition. Only a few hundred are chosen, including Jaden. And to have that be the second time is just really a testament to her skills and abilities. And I put the YouTube link in there if you had a chance to watch that, where they had the performance that they gave. So kudos to Jaden, and thank to Ms. Stummel on that as well.
Any questions for Mr. Mullenberg? All right, thank you. Mr. Lane.
I was muted, sorry. Thanks, Julie. The first one is open enrollment alternative apps, and we do have one for a 7th grade girl that is wants to open enroll to Melrose Mindoro. So we'd ask that you approve that.
Motion to approve enrollment to Melrose.
I'll second.
Motion made by Shelley, second by Lori to approve the open enrollment alternative application. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you. B, attendance at township and village meetings. I've done this on a yearly basis since I've been superintendent, and I always feel that it's a very positive thing. It gives me a chance to get out and talk to council members or township members. And basically what I do is try to give them a state of the school synopsis of that year. And so I went to the village of Rockland and village of Bangor last week. They happened to be on the same night, so it was a pretty quick meetings for both. And basically what I talked about, you know, obviously a little bit about the COVID situation, but then really, you know, how is our district doing enrollment wise? How is our district doing financially? And, you know, one of the things I talked to them about is the good news about we've paid off debt, and the remaining debt is on our renovation of our elementary school. And so just the positive news about that. And then, you know, I did talk a little bit about referendum, not sharing much because I didn't know what your decision would be going ahead with the 22-25 referendum. So I will be then going to the town of Burns and the town of Bangor meetings in December. And then I obviously also shared with them my retirement and gave them a little bit of a synopsis on the timeline for the selection of the new superintendent. So again, very positive meetings, and you know, you know, as much as you can enjoy going to any meeting, I do enjoy going to them. So just a breakdown on that. So obviously I'll report at our December meeting on the Burns and town of Bangor meetings. Letter C, if you go in your packet to page 29, again, this is kind of my standard letter to parents. So I wanted to share it with you tonight, and then I will be sending it out to parents. Just gives a rundown of how I try to make the best decision I can for school closing. And, you know, the factors that I go into, obviously, you know, what's forecasted, talking to a number of the area superintendents. And then ultimately, obviously, I make the decision. And I always try to do it as early as possible, being cognizant of people and their work schedules and everything. So I try to get it on before 6 o'clock. And then at the last part, the last second to last paragraph, I talk about, where they can find the information, the various radio stations and TV channels. I also try to, again, time permitting, try to text parents, a quick text, even before I may put this on, because I know a lot of people, or most people, have their phones handy and everything. So again, time permitting, I try to do that. And then again, I use the JMC system for both the texting and whether it's an email or whether it's a voice call. Generally, voice call I only do if it's going to be early out, because I think it's important that parents know that information. So anyway, I guess any questions on this at all? Again, it's pretty standard. It's what I've sent out every year to parents.
Do we intend to use a virtual setup if we do have a snow day?
Yes, Joni, I would like to, actually, when we get into the calendar, I'd like to get your thoughts on that for not only next year, but this year. And because I know a lot of the superintendents in my discussions with both the La Crosse County superintendents and the Scenic Bluff superintendents, we Zoom once a week, mostly to talk about COVID, but we do get on to other subjects, and that one has come up. So I'd like to have that conversation later, if that would be okay.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Next agenda item, discussion and approval of salary increase. This is on page 20 or 30, I'm sorry. So at last month's meeting, we talked about, discussed this. And as you know, just to remind, the board and the community, we held off on giving staff increase because we wanted to make sure that the state budget was not going to be cut in terms of what the original biennium budget had given us. And fortunately, it did not. Our state aid came in what it was projected to be at, and there weren't cuts in other areas. So when at the annual meeting, I talked about that we building this into the budget, and we did. And again, I want to remind the board, it's a balanced budget, including this. So on page 30, you can see the breakdown of, so for the administrative staff, confidential staff, and support staff, a CPI increase of 1.81 are the figures that are listed for each of those areas. For the teachers, that is based on the salary model that we adopted 3 years ago. So with our teachers, we have actually 54 would make a sub-level movement, which is a $900 increase. And then out of those teachers, 8 would make a level movement, which if you remember our salary model, we have 5 levels in it. So when they make a jump from the bottom of that level, then they go to the next level, that's a $1,200 increase. So the total increase for the teachers would be, including the sub-level and level movement, would be 51,153. The total for the administrative, confidential, and support staff would be 20,465. So the total wage increase for the entire staff would be 71,618. So questions, please. I do want to emphasize, I think it would be a welcome, a welcome thing for our staff to, for this. As you know, they've been working very, very hard. And so I think this would definitely help a little boost the morale.
So
we
Dave,
discuss-
go ahead, Joni. No, you go ahead, Joni.
Is this going to be retroactive then?
Yeah, so Angie will then, over the next couple pay periods, make retroactive payments. Yes, Joni, starting the new fiscal or the new pay period started August 21st. So it would be retroactive to that.
Dave, you mentioned 54. What's the 54.17 there?
That's the FTEs. So like, for example, Lori, we have a number of part-time staff. So what
Okay.
that's saying is that it's a combination of full-time.
Full-time and part-time?
Yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
54.17 would be all of them put together, full-time, part-time.
Okay.
Last month, I brought up cell phone allowance for teachers, and you said you would do a comparables when we talked about salary packages for teachers.
So comparables in what respect, Jack?
Well, remember I said last month, we give administrators $1,200 a year for cell phones. Teachers use their cell phones. So I propose that we give teachers $1,200 a year to use their cell phones. And you said you would bring back comparables.
Okay, well, I thought we didn't go any further in terms of what that would be cost, because if you're looking at $1,200 a year for every teacher, you're talking about a $60,000 approximate cost to the district for that. So I think that was something that if you want to pursue further, then we could definitely put it on the agenda for further discussion. So, but that would be the approximate cost, Jack, right?
Yep, 54 teachers. Yep, 54.17 teachers.
Yep.
Is that a blessing or a curse? I'm just asking. I'm asking because I no longer have students in school, but are we projecting that we want our teachers to be available 24/7 on their cell phones, or what are we? I mean, I'm just asking.
I don't see the point in it. You also mentioned last month, Jack, that you received text messages from a teacher, and I've never received a text message from a teacher. If a teacher chooses to use their phone to message you, that's their choice. They have email, they have other means of doing that. And at the price that we're talking about, I don't think we can make the argument that because an administrator has one, every teacher should have one, should have that benefit. Nobody's calling a second grade teacher when there's a break-in at the school, or the water pipe breaks, or there's a fire alarm or something like that. I think it's a pretty big expenditure. I don't know that there's a real good rationale for it. So I personally wouldn't favor such a thing.
And I would worry about the sustainability. $54,000 a year.
Well, you upped it from 300 and some to $1,200 per 5 people and didn't blink.
So
yeah,
is
it's
that
a lot of money.
So is that what this is about?
No,
To settle an old war?
No, it's that teachers use their cell phones. I know they do. I have numerous texts when I would correspond with teachers. Yes, sometimes it's email, teachers of my kids. Sometimes it's text. I definitely get texts from teachers. And in my experience working with teachers, I know teachers text parents regularly.
But that's
Because
their
that's how-
choice. But that's their choice, Jack. They have email, they have a phone in their room.
Yeah, I'm not saying it isn't. I'm just saying I know they do it. And some parents, that's the best way to get a hold of them. Parents in the world today, I think parents are more responsive on text than they are at email. So I'm just advocating for the teachers.
Yeah.
Oh, I agree. I like I said, I think it's shameful that they have to be that available, but I'm not saying it's not the way of the world, but I just think it's a sad state of affairs that everybody thinks everybody's got to be available 24/7. And like I said, I almost think it's more of a curse.
Well, I would also point out that in this gotcha world we're living in, that every communication on those phones then becomes subject to open records request too. So I think we're pursuing this for the wrong reasons, in my opinion.
That's fine. My proposal's still out there, so.
So are you going to make it as a motion? Is it
Yeah, I
part
did
of
last
the
month. I'll make it as a
compensation
motion
package? Are they
again.
separate?
It
Well, I
wasn't
guess
a
I'd like-
motion. It wasn't a motion last month, Jack.
Yeah, I think it was a, I can't remember how it was worded. It was a proposal, maybe. I don't know, maybe it wasn't a motion.
Right.
But Dave said he would bring back comparables. We could talk about it.
Guess what kind of comparables are you wanting? If you know it's 1,200 a month, it's 1,200 a month. What else do you want?
1,200 a year, so comparables to other districts paid.
I misspoke. Yeah, 1,200 a year. What else are you asking for or looking for comparables?
Yeah, like, do other districts pay their teachers for cell phone use? Do other districts pay their administrators for cell phone use? That's what we were looking at.
Okay, because that was never, I don't remember that being talked about last month. You just said bring comparables, and even last month, I was a little unsure what you're really asking for. So I guess, yeah, if you want comparables, Dave, I guess, see who else pays teachers' cell phones in the area, if anyone.
Yeah, what I could do is have CISA 4 do a survey and then find out, ask them to do it, and then I could bring that back at the December meeting if that's what you'd like.
So the item on the agenda tonight is the staff wage increases. Are we tying that are we tying these two things together, or are we going to handle them separately? Because if we're going to wait another month on the cell phone information, we're going to wait another month on the wage increases. What's the proposal?
I think these are separate.
I'd like to do them separate.
Yeah.
Just because I don't want to make people to wait for their money for one separate proposal.
Dave, I'd also like to know how this fits into the budget, if we've budgeted for it, or if this would be an overage.
Well, this, if
You
we
mean
were
the
to put it in this year, it would be an overage because
Okay.
we'd have, because it's something that, unlike the salary increase, we budgeted that in. So if we were to look at it for this year, then it would be an overage.
Okay.
There's a couple of things to look at here is the money that's available for the idea. If the teachers want a phone allowance, I mean, if I were a teacher, I may want more of a classroom allowance increase versus a cell phone, because there are deals and discounts out there for teachers right now through Verizon. And if we don't like the phone too, we can always try to take that out of the contract for the administration too, if that's something that we don't like. But I think sometimes money in hand is better than an allowance for a cell phone package.
Tina, I have to disagree with you. I don't think we're talking about taking it out of the administrator's contracts. I think that's where we've gone askew here. This is and this is my opinion. I think that we're trying to fix a problem that doesn't exist, in my opinion, and I believe it's based on an old sore spot rather than what's really best for the district.
Dave, I do have a question though. You're at 1.81 increase. How do we get to that number?
The CPI increase?
Yep. So just it's the basic number that everybody's giving. That's the number. That's what we go across by.
With that,
like that. So once you figure that out, you see the amount and you say that's within our budget and we're good.
right.
We always give CPI.
Yes, we've always, that's an overused term. Generally, we have given at least the CPI, or if not a little more. And the way, and I think the last 2-3 years, it's been the CPI. I'd have to go back and look at the minutes, Tina, but I'm pretty sure for administration, confidential staff, support staff, it's been the CPI. And then again, the teacher model, salary model is how that is framed. So
So right now, we're looking at the salary increase. That's what we have in front of us. Dave presented it last month. Gabe provided the figures, the financials tonight, and we are looking at either approving this or disapproving.
I will make a motion to approve the salary increases for all staff per the information that Dave provided us with for the 2021 wage increase.
I'll second that.
Motion made by Lori, seconded by Shelley. Shelley to approve the 2021 staff wage increases. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And Jean, I will abstain. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, letter E, school calendar 21-22. You will find the actual calendar on page 31 that is being proposed. And then talking points on page 32. So the talking points, again, what I want to remind the board is the calendar is very similar in terms of last year's calendar, in terms of start and end dates, professional days, PT conference dates, and holidays. And there might be a little change here and there in terms of arrangement of a professional day in a certain month, but in general, very, very similar to what was done in the past. The start date for teachers, we do a floating in-service day on Monday, August 23rd, and that's basically 8 hours that can be put in any time. I say August 23rd, they can actually do it before August 23rd or after the 26th. But then the required in-service days for teachers are August 24th, 25th, and 26th. First day with students is Wednesday, September 1st. Just a reminder to the board that the state doesn't allow schools to start before September 1st. Some people get the Labor Day and the September 1st mixed up. Some people say, well, you can't start before Labor Day. Yes, you can. It just can't be before September 1st. Last day for students is a half day on Friday, June 3rd. That's always been the case, that we get students out by 11:30. Now back to Joni's point, and this is what we can talk about in a little bit. Based on the old calendar, if we were to have a snow makeup day, it would be, if we had to make up time, it would be Monday, June 7th. Next bullet point, 9 professional days, and you can see the days in front of you. And again, I'm so appreciative to our board for those professional development days. They really make a difference in the PLC process for our school. I'm just hoping eventually we can do them face-to-face again, rather than just Zoom, but they're still very beneficial even on Zoom. Parent-teacher conferences, November 4th and 16th. Start and end dates, August 23rd and June 3rd for teachers is consistent with previous calendars. 4 days are built into the calendar before students have to make up days. And so then the discussion, the last bullet point is snow makeup days. So there are schools of thought out there that because we can go virtual now, do you still allow 1 or 2 snow days? I mean, again, talking to area superintendents, especially given, the, situation, and I guess I'm talking about this year and everything, that snow days, 1 or 2 are still kind of nice, both for kids and students and staff. But if you allowed 1 or 2 that quote regular snow days, then after that, you could deliver instruction virtually. Or you could start with instruction. If you had any makeup days, you could start with virtual instruction from day one. So that is the major points on the calendar. And so I guess I'll entertain questions regarding the calendar.
With the snow makeup days, if we would, there's 4 in a calendar, looking at the 21-22 school year. If we're to say any snow day, we want to go virtual, could we end before Memorial Day?
Yeah, Shelley, if you walked it back where, so you would have, if you you made up any snow days right away virtually, that means you could back it up to the 31st. The only other way then is to get it done before Memorial Day, like the 26th, 27th, would be to then eliminate one of the break days or like a winter break day or a spring break day or something like that. Again, there's pros and cons to that because of the fact that obviously the spring gets long without some breaks in there. So it's half dozen of one and 6 of the other. So but that in order to accomplish that, Shelley, that's the way you'd have to do it.
The calendar has 4 makeup days, but after Memorial Day is 3.5 days, so we wouldn't need any other day out of there, would we?
I guess, yep, you're right. Counting it now and looking at it.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
The only other thing though, Shelley, that would be a little bit concerning, and again, it would be, I don't want to say the new superintendent's problem, but it would be that, if you did have, like some late starts or early dismissals, then I guess if you had a number of those, then you'd have to end up, I guess, going into either, like the 31st or the 1st or the 2nd. So, yeah,
right.
But it's possible, yes.
Yeah.
Do you need a motion on this tonight, Dave?
Yes, or if you prefer to have more discussion on it, Lori, being that, we're going to have a presentation by the School Board Association, we could bring it back next month if you would like that. Again, I think if it's approved by December, we're still fine in terms of planning for the next year for people. I know people like to have it out there as soon as possible in terms of arranging, vacations and all of that. So.
Is it realistic to think that every snow day could be virtual? Would everybody have their devices home and so on and so forth?
Good question, Joni.
That it is a very good question, Joni. Obviously, the middle school, high school takes theirs home all the time. So Mike and I talked a little bit about this, and I'll let him chime in to explain a little bit more. But, we did think that, probably if we knew that the weather forecast looked like it's a possibility, then he would inform his staff that, hey, iPads go home tonight with kids. Mike, do you want to comment on that, please?
Yeah, sure. It would be just that. If we had the inkling that something severe was going to occur, staff would organize that. Probably, I don't think that's really that big of a hurdle. That we're doing it now, really. Granted, we got a couple days notice or a day or two notice this last time, but it's a similar process of getting things in order. In that case, so typically you're talking 1 or 2 days or that sort of thing. You're not talking, weeks or anything like that. So, staff would, I think they're comfortable with that right now.
Dave, isn't there a difference though between the number of hours or minutes that an elementary child needs to be in school versus a high school, middle school child? So what if there's a big difference in hours there, I don't want to say it's a moot point. I don't want to take instruction away from elementary school students, but would we have more of a buffer there with elementary school kids compared to high school, middle school kids?
Great point, Lori, and I wish I would have put that in my notes. I remember that we used to go by days. And again, I'm trying to remember if it was 3 years ago or 4 years ago that we switched to hours. So to Lori's point, the high school, middle school, high school is 1,137 hours. That's required by DPI. And elementary is 1,050. So to Lori's point, you could, if there was, if the kids didn't bring home a day or two in terms of hours, you'd still meet the requirement hours for the elementary. Again, built into this calendar is when I say 4 days, it's basically about 30 hours. So again, that's where you get that cushion in terms of I'll use the word snow days in it. So great point, Lori. Yes. So there is a difference.
So did the teachers have input? Did other people have input and thoughts on the calendar?
Yeah, Jack, thank you for bringing that up. Yes, I put it out to staff, and frankly, I only got a couple of emails back, and one was pertaining to actually the early part of the year from September through December, when there isn't really a break in terms of in October, because we have professional days, but that September 1st through to Thanksgiving, when there isn't a break day in there. That was that person expressed that. I responded by saying, again, the calendar is so compressed because we can't start before September 1st. So the options would either be, if they wanted a break day in that fall, then either you add a day on, in whenever school ends, or you steal a day in the spring. So there's really not a way to create, that additional day other than by doing it that way. And the only other one I had was one of the teachers asked about parent-teacher conferences and the possibility of instead of the elementary always being 11 to 7, the high school 12 to 8, could they flip it one of the conferences? And I said, yeah, we could certainly discuss that. But that's all the feedback that I got.
Okay, I think the virtual teaching on snow days would be a good question, for them, like you talked about preparation and that kind of stuff. If we're looking at changing it from what's presented here, especially.
Good. We can do that if the board wants to.
If we have time, I think maybe Dave, you can do that.
Okay.
And then we can revisit it. Since it doesn't have to be approved tonight, we could revisit it then in December.
Okay.
And put it on the December agenda.
Okay, so the things that I would ask about is the virtual days, and then to Shelley's point about, trying to get out before Memorial Day. So the end date, which obviously would be tied to the virtual days, and everything. So,
Yeah,
okay,
that's a good idea.
Yep. Okay, I will get that out to staff and then bring it back.
The other question I have, Dave, I know when we had this discussion a year ago, obviously that was before virtual learning was the norm. It was DPI was not approving that as a day.
Right.
Have they changed? Is that still something that is a hurdle, or is that all good now?
Yeah, Shelley, that's really changed. And honestly, I think it's because of COVID, because that's how we had to deliver it. And I will tell you that even though we're talking about the 21-22 calendar, that there are still waivers out there for the current year on instructional hours. So that's something that a number of districts are looking at just because of the number of virtual days that we've had. So anyway, yes, they have definitely reframed how they look at it because of COVID and virtual delivery.
Okay.
So we'll put the school calendar on the December agenda.
Okay,
Dave can collect some more data.
I'd be glad to do that. Okay. So next is a presentation by the Wisconsin School Board Association. So John, can you admit Guy, and I will give him a call. So if I'm just going to put myself on mute and get a hold of Guy, and then we can go from there. John, can you admit, please?
I just admitted him, Dave, so he should actually be able to hear.
I can hear you, and you should be able to hear me now.
Can you hear me now, Guy?
Start my video. Now you'll even be able to see me. Probably better to just hear me.
So I believe all of you probably, I should say all of you, a number of you know Guy as he was the CISA director for CISA 4 for a number of years. Previous to that, he was a superintendent at Blair Taylor. And then obviously in his presentation materials is more of his background. And obviously Guy has had a ton of administrative experience and now has been with WASB. I believe Guy for the last 5 years, am I correct?
Yes. Yes, that's correct.
So, and I did send the board the presentation materials. So board, if you want to open that up, and then I will turn it over to Guy to present. Thank you, Guy.
Thank you. And I'm joined this evening by another former CISA administrator. Cheryl Gullicksrud is going to do a little bit of work with WSB. And so I invited her to come along and just kind of maybe shadow me as we go through a presentation this evening so that she can get a feel for it, because we've got other work to do, and we'll put our consultants to work. Julie, you had an opportunity to see one of our virtual search processes when we did the CISA 4 search, and ultimately COVID-19 has caused us to dramatically change the way we conduct searches. We have done a number of searches using a virtual process, and frankly, we're getting much better at it. A lot of it depends on the districts having good technology. But the one thing I'll say about doing a virtual search, while we as the candidate would be virtual, you are welcome, and most districts want to have the candidates come live for the interviews. And that's certainly a parameter. You know, we would talk about potential candidates that are being invited for an interview and say the board would like to visit with you live. And in nearly all cases, they have been very willing to come in, knowing that we're going to respect social distancing and all those kind of things. There's not going to be any handshaking. But we've been able to make it work out where basically, as we participate in an interview process, we are virtual, but the candidate can be there live. And I've worked in some districts where some of the board members have chose not to be at the meeting in person. They have attended those meetings virtually. So knowing that you've been meeting for a full 2 hours already, I want to try and make this as short as possible. So I'll run through things, and then I'll give you an opportunity to ask any questions you might have about the process. And perhaps the easiest way to run through it would be if you take the schedule of activities that got sent with you with your proposal. That's really a kind of a tentative calendar for how we might conduct a search. And if I run through that, I can kind of explain the whole process as I go through it. And realistically, if we're going to do a search process, it always starts with a planning meeting. And you'll notice on here, if we were to do the search for you, we would have a planning meeting on December 8th, tentatively. That's the date we've tentatively selected. And the purpose of that meeting would be to, number one, approve this calendar so that board members know, okay, these are the nights that I'm obligated to be available for activities to take place. It would be an opportunity to begin talking about what you're looking for in your next superintendent from a board perspective. It's also an opportunity to talk about things such as, do you have any internal candidates? If so, how are you going to handle internal candidates? It's always a question that we ask in a planning meeting. And we also talk about doing focus groups. We really believe that to do a good search, you want to try involve your various constituents. So when I talk about focus groups, that might be anywhere from 8 to 15 people in a focus group. And typical focus groups that we would normally encourage the board to consider. Obviously, the board would be a focus group. We would have usually some teachers in a focus group, and usually the administration might select a sampling of teachers from each of the buildings so that you get representation. K-12, make sure you get some special ed representation. We do support staff as a separate focus group from teachers because we find if we do them together, the support staff don't say anything. But if you do them as their own group, they tend to be a lot more vocal and are pretty honest in what they share. Some schools do student focus groups, though in today's times with COVID, that may or may not be an option, though if they want to be online, we can certainly do that. And then you may also decide you want to do a community focus group. And so if you want to do that in a planning meeting, we talk about how many focus groups do you want to do? And you'll notice the next thing I've got on there is we would conduct those focus groups on December 16th. And basically what we would do is just schedule those different times during the day. People would be asked to commit about 45 minutes to participate in a focus group. So what I would be doing if I'm the consultant is I would be asking the same questions of each of those groups. They would respond to those questions. I record all of the answers, and then I pull all of that together and I put together an executive summary. But you get all of those responses. But the reason we do those focus groups is they help us to determine some themes. They help us determine maybe what you're looking for in your next superintendent. It's a way to get some feedback to the board from your various constituent groups. Another way of doing that is by doing a community survey. And if you want to do a community survey, that again talks about 5 or 6 questions in what you're looking for in your next superintendent. People can go on and do that on the web. We would just have your technology person post a link on the web. You would publicize that the survey is going to be open for about 10 days. When people respond to that survey, that information goes right back to the WSB office. Sally pulls together a report for that, and that's another piece of information that goes to the board that you would get in your district brochure materials. So that's kind of what happens with planning meeting and with focus groups. Another thing we do is we put together an electronic district brochure, and normally in putting that brochure together, we might work probably with the administrative assistant. We've got a couple of questions that we would have the administrative assistant usually respond to that kind of get down to what are some of the things you're really proud of in the Bangor community and in the Bangor school district, and what it's an opportunity to highlight some things. What it is for us is this an electronic marketing brochure that we put out along with your application materials that lets the candidates know a little bit about your district and maybe encourages them to look a little deeper and learn more about it. You'll notice on December 11th on this calendar, we would show a vacancy notice being posted. That's just what we call a level 1 notice. That's just going to say to people, hey, just letting you know there's a vacancy in the Bangor School District for a superintendent. Please watch the WSB website. Material or information on how to apply will be forthcoming. And that actually happens on December 21st. After we've done the focus groups and we've developed some essay questions, we actually post what you used to call the stage 2 application, but we post an electronic application. And then people have from there until January 25th to apply for the position. We close it on January 25th, and when it closes, you'll get an email. We work with the Ohio School Board Association on a software called Revelis. And so when the application closes, the day after it closes, you will get access to Revelis, and you'll be able to go in there and look at all of the application materials, all of the completed applications. You'll see everything about them. You'll see their letter of interest. You'll see their resume, their answers to the essay questions, their reference letters that they've received. All of those materials are available to the board. And as a search firm, we believe it's important that the board has the opportunity to see all of those materials. Because on February 2nd on this calendar, we would go through and review applications and choose people to interview. And normally in a first round of interview, we might recommend that you visit with 6 candidates. If I were doing the search, I would come into that meeting with a good working knowledge of who all of the candidates are and would be able to let you know if there is somebody on there that perhaps has some things in their background that you might want to give pause and think about before you just bring that individual in for an interview. We don't hold that kind of information back. If there's things you should know, we want you to be aware of that. And I tell you what, having said that though, there are times when you might have a candidate who has been a superintendent in another district and is leaving there under some stressed circumstances. That doesn't necessarily make that person a bad candidate. What it says is, for some reason, the board fell out of love with that candidate. And while he or she may no longer have a good working relationship in that district, they may do very well in another district. So just because somebody has had a bad experience, we like to try to look past that and at least see what the reasons may be. And that may cause you to say, we'd like to visit with that individual, or it may say, nah, we just soon stay away. That becomes your call. So we would do that on February 2nd. We would choose people you want to interview, and then the consultant would take care of contacting all of the candidates and getting all the interviews set up, setting up the times for all of the interviews. And right now we've got that first round of interviews scheduled tentatively for February 8th and 9th. So that's the 2 evenings you would meet with the candidates. We would meet with each candidate for approximately an hour. And once you have finished meeting with all 6 candidates, we would then, on that second evening, meet and discuss who do you think you want to bring back as your finalists. Normally, we recommend you bring back 3 finalists, and here's why. We've had situations where a district has said, well, no, we really don't find 3 that we like. We only are going to bring back 2. And the day of the second interview, one of them withdraws. And then the board has 1. We've had that happen in a district or 2 in the past, and it tends to be somewhat embarrassing for the board if they've only got a single candidate, because then they've got to decide, well, are we going to just simply go through with that, or are we going to reopen things? What are we going to do? Normally, with this type of search time frame, we're just getting into the search season right now. So as you look at doing a search, you're going to have the broadest field available. And as we move along, that field starts to narrow as people begin to take jobs. But right now, you'll see the broadest field of candidates that are available. By the way, when we go to do the interviews, we will assist the board on development of interview questions. And after you've completed the first round of interviews, there's a place in there where we talk about doing background and reference checks. WSB will do the background checks for criminal and civil information, for educational background checks, those kind of things. We'll do those official background checks. But when it comes to making some phone calls and talking to some of their references, we really recommend that a couple board members maybe do that, because while you can have us do it, and we're happy to do it for you, we're then reporting to you secondhand. So we maybe aren't able to talk about when we ask the question of, would you bring this candidate, would you bring this person back to your district if you had the opportunity? Sometimes it's hard to describe that. Well, we got 15 seconds of silence on the other end of the phone. Sometimes you need to just hear that firsthand, because those become real tells. And when it comes to after the second round of interviews, normally in today's times, after boards have done 2 rounds of interviews and have gotten to know the candidates and have done their due diligence on some background checks, not many districts do site visits anymore. We still put it in our search proposal, but anything past the final round of interviews are really kind of tentative things, and those dates really become a little bit more meaningless. But you could do a site visit if you wanted. Your final selection really depends on what happens. Many times when we finish second interviews, the board may know who they want to offer a contract to that night. And we've had instances where after the board gets done with the interviews, they might call the candidate that they want as he or she is on their way home, and let them know that there's going to be a contract coming their way. Now, other things that we look at in the search process, Dave has been with the district for how many years now, Dave? You're muted.
9, Guy. This is my
9 years. Okay, so realistically, you may or may not want to either have your local legal or have WSB just review the superintendent contract before you reoffer it again, just in case something has changed in there that, maybe there's something that you want to take out, or maybe there's something that an attorney sees that should be modified. And WSB can do that as part of the search process, and it doesn't take a great deal of time or effort to do that, but it's worth doing. It's also worth looking at the job description and just seeing if you feel your job description is pretty up to snuff, and that's a question that you might even ask of Dave, because he's been the person who's been asked to carry that job description out. But it's always good to make sure that you have the job description to look at, and certainly we can look it over also if you like. When it comes to negotiating a contract, we will gather some salary comparable information for you that you can have, so you'll have an idea of where you might want to be on things. But you also can look at the current area and decide where you're at. But we'll give you the comparables we get. School districts aren't as good about sharing that information as they used to be, unless they want to search. Then all of a sudden, then they want it shared. But it's a struggle. It used to be much easier to get. Now we have to ask multiple times for it. But we'll do the best we can on that. And then once you've got a contract on board, we will offer a superintendent expectations meeting that can usually be done sometime in the fall, maybe after the person's been on the job for a couple months. And realistically, the purpose of that is to just make sure you get off on the right foot. Just to kind of have a conversation of how's it gone to start the year? How are we feeling about things? What 1 or 2 goals do we maybe want to be working on in the first year? And it can start a conversation. It can also began to alert the superintendent, these things are important. These things will probably be part of my first year evaluation. So so that's all included in the search process. We did put a cost in there, and I put a cost in of not to exceed $7,000 to do a search. That is found on page 10 of your proposal. And it's in the first paragraph. Now, we list some additional national search type options. Now, please understand, when we post your search, this is going to be posted at several universities and several places in Wisconsin. We also are part of the National Association of, or National Affiliation of Superintendent Searchers. So this thing will automatically be posted in 40 states. So you're going to get national exposure, but I'll be real honest with you. Chances are your next superintendent is going to be somebody from Wisconsin, and it may be an existing superintendent, or it may be somebody aspiring to their first superintendency. We do list some additional packages where you could buy additional national advertising, but frankly, I don't know that you would want to spend the money on doing that additional national advertising, because I don't think it's going to bear good results necessarily. At that point, I've kind of flown through this, but what questions does anybody have right now about the process?
Hey, Guy, this is Paul Winch. My question, every school district thinks that they're unique from everyone around them. So my question to you is, what do you do different? What do you offer different to a Bangor than, say, you're pitching this to Menominee or Madison? Your process is pretty spelled out here. What does anything change based on a big school, small school?
No, the process. Well, big schools will do a lot more focus groups. You know, they'll get more involved in things. But when it comes to a smaller school, we like to do a good job on putting that brochure together. We actually get better feedback from the various groups on focus groups in the smaller districts than in the larger districts. But we don't have a preferred group of applicants. We have a number of people that we know that are looking for jobs. They watch the WSB website because we do a lot of searches, and so they're looking at jobs. They will call us, and we tell them, you know, call us. Don't call board members. Call us. We basically, when we're working for Bangor and when we're talking to candidates about the Bangor position, we market Bangor. You know, and ultimately, we may have a candidate who is scheduled for an interview in Bangor on a Monday night and is scheduled somewhere else in the state on a Tuesday night, and they're both WSB searches. We just work it out so that those searches don't occur at the same time, so that individual can be a part of both searches if they want to be. But if we've got the Bangor search, when we're working on finding candidates for Bangor, then you're that. If I'm the search consultant, then you become my top priority when I'm working on Bangor materials. So and again, we've got a number of consultants. I'm one of 8 consultants that work on searches, and even though you pay to have one consultant do your search, we talk amongst ourselves. So when we're going through and we're looking at the various applicants, maybe I've got somebody from Southeast Wisconsin who would like to come to Bangor because maybe they were originally from this area of the state. They want to get back here, but maybe I don't know them. But George down in Southeast Wisconsin may know that person and may be able to give me some information on that. So because we're located around the state, we're able to get a pretty good grasp of who various candidates are. We expect to see a lot of superintendent turnover this year once again, and there'll be a number of people that are looking to get into the superintendency for the first time. But there'll be some quality candidates, and that's another thing. We check with some of the universities, such as the Turbo, to say who's coming and what do we know about them? And having spent some years teaching superintendent classes at Viterbo, I still have some connections to some of those people that went through classes and that ended up taking superintendencies. So does that kind of help you out on the question, Paul?
Yeah, thank you. One more, if I may.
Yes.
How common or uncommon is it to have the outgoing superintendent part of the process? And maybe it's situational.
It's totally situational. There are, as a matter of fact, there are some districts where the superintendent basically states, I want nothing to do with the process. There's other times where the board may say to the outgoing superintendent, would you be willing to be a greeter when our candidates come in and just informally talk with the candidate about what you do and what's, things that are going on in the district, talk about superintendent type things. Some boards want the superintendent to do that. Others want somebody else to serve in that greeter function. But frankly, there's no right or wrong way to do it. It's really up to the board, and that's something we would talk about in the planning meeting.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have one question for you. So one of the things I didn't see in the plan that you put together is I've noticed that in some cases after like those final 3 candidates that you talked about are selected, that a lot of times there's kind of a, for lack of a better term, like a meet and greet where they answer questions from the public. Is that just kind of a non-thing right now because of COVID, or is that something that you do or you don't do, or you do or don't recommend?
Well, we've not been able to, we've not necessarily been able to do in-person community forums. We have done a few virtual community forums where basically we've set it up where the candidate would be in front of a camera. The consultant would be asking questions of the candidate, and anybody from the community could zoom in and watch the forum. And actually we've had it where they could either submit questions to the consultant ahead of time, or they could submit questions while the materials are going on, and we would try to ask as many of those questions as we can. So we have done virtual public forums, and it's not as good as having everybody there, but in today's times right now, it's just not a good idea to bring everybody into a room. Now we wouldn't, who knows what it'll be when we get to February 22nd. Things may change. A lot of times for the second round of interviews, Lori, what happens is the board may be interviewing one of the 3 candidates. There may be another group interviewing a second candidate, and the third candidate may be in a community forum. And then it would be a round robin, and it would rotate through. So yes, I'm sorry that I missed that, but yes, we normally do that. And yes, we could do, if we can't do it in person, we could work with your technology person and arrange an electronic public forum. That's something we didn't do at CISA because it just doesn't fit as well with the CISA search.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Yep. But we have done that. We did that we did that for Toma. We did that for West Salem. We did that for Gale Electric Trempealeau when we did their searches. So.
Any other questions for Guy?
Quiet group, and I can tell it was a long meeting. If you decide that you want to move ahead with something, what I would do is prepare a contract and send it. And if you felt you wanted to go ahead and you felt that December 8th would work as a planning meeting date, that's a Wednesday night.
I think it's a Tuesday.
It's a Tuesday.
It's a Tuesday night? Okay. It's December 8th anyway. That I know. Yeah, But anyway, if you decide you wanna do something, we could certainly do that. And again, if you want, I could serve as your consultant, or we've got other consultants that could be that could work with the district as well. So I know I talked with one of them who formerly had been in your district. Who is right now spending his time in Florida, but he's staying healthy.
Any other comments, questions for Guy?
All right. And did
right.
Cheryl get on board?
Cheryl's, yep, she's on.
She's on. Okay. All right. I thought she was.
We saw her face previously. She's just camera turned off now.
All right. Well, if you find you've got any other questions, feel free to send those to me or give me a call. I'm easy to reach, and we would love the opportunity to be able to work with Bangor and help you select your next superintendent. Being formerly working in the CISA-4 region, I'm very proud of the quality of the superintendents we have in CISA-4, and we're always looking to make sure that we maintain that high quality. I think we've got some really, really good superintendents in the region.
Thank you, Guy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Bye.
You too. Bye, Cheryl.
Is this pretty standard protocol for what we've done in the past? Because
Bye,
obviously.
Cheryl. When we hired Dave, we did not use WASVA. Paul, before that?
I know that I don't honestly recall. I thought we did use a search for Dave.
Dave Lane? No, we didn't. Is that right, Dave?
No, yeah.
We
And
did.
I'm talking previously, like while Roger was already in-house. John Wyatt?
John Wyatt, we used a search. I don't know if it was WASBA, but we did use a search.
Okay. I've worked with WASVA for two administrators for CISA. It's slick. I mean, they do a lot of work. They get everything organized. They've both times I was very impressed with how they did. Dave, have you worked with them before?
WSB?
Yes.
Not in the search process, Julie, no.
Okay. Has anyone else?
So educate me. If we don't use them, what do we do?
All of those things he mentioned fall on us.
Yeah.
It's going to fall on someone else's desk to do, because all of those things that they provide are things that you really should be doing. And so this is all-in-one service, if you will. I think it's become more of the norm in recent years, but again, that's just my opinion. But Joni, to answer your question, maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but someone else will have to do all of that.
Exactly.
So I just wasn't sure how to go about it. So,
You know, and I like how they go about the focus groups with the teachers and the support staff and the community. I mean, I think that's really getting a really good picture of the whole. And if they don't do it, then that would fall on us to do that. And that it's a lot of work.
Not only is it a lot of work, but I also believe there's something to be said for hiring people who are experts in that area, who are SMEs, who can get to the right questions and help. Focus groups aren't easy to do. I've done enough of them myself. And sometimes it's nice to be able to look at their expertise from and they would be coming from an outside position. They're not coming from being inside of, the board and everything like that. So I do think there's something to be said for hiring an expert in that area.
I agree 200%, exactly. So we would need a motion to decide if we will hire them for their service, if that's what we think we want to do. Any other thoughts, discussion?
If we make a motion to go with WASBA, are we also gonna select Guy as our consultant, or do we leave that to the luck of the draw? I personally have faith in Guy. He comes from a smaller district. He's familiar with Bangor. I think those are all positives that we could use.
I agree. He knows about small districts, exactly. I think that it would be, if we want to do separate motions, we could, but we could do one motion if we're in agreement about Guy. Any other thoughts?
I would move that we accept the offer from WASBA for their search, the price tag of $7,000, not to exceed $7,000. And I would, as a caveat, I would suggest that Guy Levitt be our consultant.
I will second that.
Motion made by Paul, seconded by Lori to accept Wisconsin School Board Association on superintendent search process of $7,000 or not to exceed $7,000, and to accept and to ask Guy Lovett to be our consultant. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. So Dave, do you want me to call Guy, or what's our next step?
Whatever you prefer, Julie, I can certainly call him, or if you would like as board president, whatever you prefer.
Okay, I'll call him. I'll give him a call.
Okay.
I think this is a board action, so it would make sense that you call them, Julie.
I'll call him. Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone. All right. What do we have next here? Celebrations.
Julie, I'd like to celebrate American Education Week, which is this week. And our staff, who's been doing such an unbelievable job given the circumstances that we're facing, and the amount of effort, work that our staff, from our teachers to our support staff to our administration, I just want to celebrate American Education Week and recognize them.
Agree. Thank you. Okay, moving on. Removal of items from the consent agenda. We have one item on the consent agenda, and that is on page 33.
I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion made by Shelley, seconded by Joni to approve the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We have no reason to go into closed session. So I look for adjournment.
Well,
And
I have a,
question. Oh, go ahead, Jack.
you go ahead. Doesn't matter to me.
Well, I just want to know if we're going to address any of the public comments or where we stand on that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot about that.
That was my question. So, because 2 or 3 of them asked for a special meeting. I wrote down 2, but I feel like 3 did.
Yeah, I think there were 3, Jack.
Okay. I open that up for discussion.
I really feel strongly that I think the co-curricular or the co-op teams have a very strong point. I'm feeling like they really have a very valid argument. And so if there's further discussion on that, I would entertain that. That's just my opinion.
I don't see any harm in scheduling a special meeting if everyone can accommodate it.
Okay. Everyone else, okay? We'll have a
Yep.
special meeting.
I think we need to do that.
Okay.
Are you gonna doodle us or whatever it is?
Can we set it up tonight or not?
Yep.
It'd be good
Yep.
to do it tonight.
Our next regular meeting is December 16th. December 8th. I think we have a planning meeting.
What about December 2nd? For part of these extracurriculars, you know, some of them may potentially start that last week in November. So I think,
Yeah,
I mean, I don't
can't be
think,
there. I can't be there.
Okay.
I have another meeting.
Okay.
But you guys
What
can
about what about the 1st? I'm just throwing dates out.
I am gone the 1st through the 8th, but by all means, you can have the meeting without me. I can voice my opinion to whomever wants to listen ahead of time.
Well, you can even go to the 30th. That's a Monday.
November 30th. Joni, could you attend then?
Hopefully, if I'm ready, prepared. Is the 30th open for everybody else?
Yep, it works for me.
Tina?
If you promise not to be late.
Okay. November 30th, 6:30.
Okay.
And are we addressing just the co-op sports? Because it wasn't just co-op sports people talking. That's Joni, what you asked, but
I think there's a valid point to be made on all extracurriculars and stuff that way. I think it should be discussion on everything and not just sports. I think it's extracurriculars in general. I think everyone should have their voices be heard and I think we should discuss it.
Okay.
So is this a discussion meeting along with motion items or just discussion of what's happening? We'll see what happens in the meeting.
I think it has the potential for motion items.
I do too.
So do we ask or invite information from our medical director if these are recommendations there?
Dave, do you know if,
I think it'd be a very good idea to have our medical director and Tammy there to answer medical questions. In fact, I think that'd be very good idea. So I could check with both of them on availability for that night.
Did we say, is it 6:30 like normal? Is that what we're planning?
Yes. And do we want to decide, will we do it Zoom, in person?
I think Zoom would be preferable at this point, but you can always change that depending on what the numbers are at that point too, I guess. I don't know.
Okay. So to be determined Zoom or face-to-face, is that okay? Okay. So November 30th at 6:30. Okay.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting. or excuse me, I'm not entertaining it. I'm making the motion.
Thank
I'll
you, Joni.
second, I'll
Motion
second
made,
that.
motion made by Joni, seconded by Paul to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for doing our first virtual meeting.
Magnuson.
Yes,
Yes.
thank
John.
John. Thank John. Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
I think
Good
it
night.
went well. Thank you.